really important. So the next thing they actually give us the amount of time that we should spend on each section. Here we'll spend, you should take less than 15 minutes. Please let me know if you haven't already installed Anaconda, and we'll try and get Anaconda installed on your machine.
Still download. Still download.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Okay. So over here, the two things we're going to be installing is Git and Anaconda. And Git is what we need to actually do the port. And Anaconda is what we'll use to actually have pycon on the machine installed. Or on the second. So you can walk through this yourself as well, and it gives you everything you need to do. The first thing, download and install Git. It really depends on which operating system you're using. On Windows, you actually have to just download the .exe file, which is really easy. For that, you should probably be using Homebrew. By now, you're already using it for installing packages. And I believe that this gives you directions on how to install Git that way. So there, so you get installed. The next thing that we're going to be doing is installing Anaconda, which some people already have. And once you're done, you would have a green sticky note. So, does anyone need help with something right now? Raise your hand if you need help with the other content.
Actually, for 2 hours.
Thank you.
I'm going to install Anaconda. I got Git and stuff. So.
Okay. You have Git. So you have
No, just do the 5 chart virtual EMB.
okay. Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Well, 5 chart is good. It's good enough for 7.
If you know how to set up virtual environments in Python,
I'm not going Python.
then you're good. You're good. I was just for beginners, like Anaconda is definitely the easiest thing to use.
So it's just like a text.
No, Anaconda is like a it's like a package manager for all these bunch of different. It works for every operating system. It works for a bunch of different languages, but it's really focused on Python.
Okay.
I don't know how to do it with PyCharm, but that's good.
You met the first also.
Yeah. Should work just fine. Yeah, well, probably not.
I know how to break that from the project. That was the easiest thing. It's not quite yeah. Great. I never had to make it to command line too. Well, I don't know about Ubuntu, but
Then we, I mean,
Yeah, sorry.
I just do that.
Open source kinds of work.
I don't know how to break one on here.
Just a minute.
Project here.
Oh, man. Yeah, you're right. But I have no clue.
Oh, do you have the remote? Do you have the remote?
So those, that's not.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Is not used by
Oh, there's also another thing that I forgot to mention. And so after all of these, below the green sticky note, there's like continued reading. I'm sorry. I don't need to scroll anymore, but there's continued reading after every single one of these files that you can dive even deeper into the concepts and like how you can customize your environment. Like I'm telling you, like I'm really recommending that you install Anaconda, but you don't have to install Anaconda. There are at least 50 other ways to install Python and get virtual environments working. So yeah, if you don't have anything to do, that's plenty of reading to even. Yeah. It's really high resolution thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Alex. You got all of them? Okay. If anybody's not done, can you raise your hand? Okay. Should have done it.
Okay, awesome. Still down. Still down. Well, okay. Down to I think mine started. No, yeah, I guess Python doesn't make it
through the agriculture.
Yeah, what's the website for your?
Yeah. You actually won't be able to access it outside of this network. If you're on like, it's in the local network. That's the URL.
Yes, that's a gross overgeneralization. It's true.
Small adventure.
Yeah, it's like
virtual environments. No, man, I'm like the command line terminal type thing. That activates.
Okay, so I'm just going to assume that everybody's gotten it completed just because we need to. And it's not super important to have Conda for this, but you'll need Conda in virtual environments to contribute later on to Python projects. Okay, so the next step, setting up virtual environments. This one is going to assume that you're using Conda to create your virtual environment. I can actually run through this with everyone. Of course. Does anybody know how to send something to another page in Max?
Send something to another page.
It doesn't let me right click.
Swipe up and then
Control right. Control shift right.
you just swipe the one that KnoxPy.
You want to send this whole here? Into this one page. Yeah.
The way to use a Mac is to wipe it and put Linux on.
I don't use Macs. Okay, we're gonna create. Okay, so another window right here. I'm just going to work on the desktop here. So first step, we will create just a directory for our virtual environment with Conda. So mkdir, is this big enough for everybody? Okay, so we make the directory, and then you'll see that it now exists with my test. And then the next step is we'll be going, I believe, we're going into it, into the actual folder. And then we're going to create a Python virtual environment. And what this is doing is it's creating an environment that it will install all your Python packages into that is completely separate from the other Python packages you have in your system. And the last thing, Python equals 3, means that we're going to have a Python 3 virtual environment. I believe it's going to default to 3.6 for this, but you can be more specific and do 3.6, and that will make sure that that happens. There's other ways to do it, and I'm not sure if it says how to activate it with Anaconda, but if you're using virtualenvs, you can do like VM, whatever the name is. There's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, if you're using the built-in virtual environment, it's Python-m, then VNV, and I think the name of whatever you call it. Yeah, if anybody needs help with that, like that would be really helpful.
When activating, it's right on your screen.
Oh. Yeah, I've really become convinced that there is actually a need for Anaconda in Python. I was actually a very strong advocate about a month ago of like just use pip, just use Python alone. But there's a lot of stuff that we actually need Anaconda for that Python will never solve.
I haven't touched Anaconda yet. Really.
So if you're dealing with any complex binaries that you need to install or shared libraries, I think Anaconda is a really good way to move forward.
Slow.
Well, so just as an example, Python has PEPs, which are like recommendations on how they're going to improve the Python ecosystem. And there was a PEP to have PyPy start to include other languages in the PyPy repositories. So oftentimes you'll have a Python package that might depend on C, or might depend on JavaScript, or might depend on, like, you name the language, maybe Ruby. And they wanted to do this PEP that said, hey, you know, in order for packaging to work like it should, we need to be able to install other languages. And that was rejected. They said they'll never do that. So, so moving forward, if you ever have a complex C dependencies, pip is never going to solve that.
But Conda does.
Yes, because Conda is not a Python package manager. So,
So what is Conda? But in essence,
Conda is a generic package manager, just like Brew, just like apt. You can really think of it at that level on the approach.
So, but it does come with it does manage all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, can you install? Can you use it in place? I mean, can you can you use it in place of other package managers, or is it
You can in some ways. Like I install Git through it. So other things that aren't Python specific through it. I think you install a CAD program.
It does some really
But yeah, specifically designed for Python.
So it's like a general purpose package manager, but it's also the Python package manager capability.
Yeah, they actually they somehow connect into pip and all those other package managers, and they fake like you're using pip, but you're actually using Conda underneath the covers. So everything behaves like it did before, but you're using Conda instead. And oh, there's another thing it does. So there's Python virtual environments. Conda allows you to have like actual virtual environments for all your binaries on your system. So it's like a full-fledged virtual environment in a sense. They do it by modifying your path variable. Yeah. Oh, and then here they want to show that you can install things. Well, first I need to activate the virtual environment. One thing you'll notice when I type this is that my batch prompt will now change. There'll be a my test that comes before it. And that's to indicate what virtual environment you're in. I think some people probably can't see this. So there it's on the very top.
What is this command after source activate?
That's it. Source activate my test. Conda install IPython mock. That's just to show that you can actually install packages. So you'll find that Conda is pretty complete as far as packages that you need. If you don't have them, you can use Conda Forge. That's a good addition to use as well with that. So you can do just the general pip install, and that will work perfectly fine inside of a Conda environment. So you can think of Conda as just a normal pip if you just want to use pip install with all that stuff.
It worked, but I was never sure. It wasn't very comfortable by doing this designing these two.
Yeah, they actually work together. So they have like actually gone into pip and they've changed how it behaves. So it should just be fine. But then it's also not going to be as easy to install with Conda. And that's where I think one thing that Anaconda has done really well is they have this concept of channels. So pip, all it knows is that you have the global Python package index. So all the packages are available in one spot, but they have no namespaces for packages. So if two people want to name a package like KnoxPy, then you're going to have some conflict in how do you like resolve who gets to have the KnoxPy repository. Well, what they do is they have channels. And for instance, this is my channel, anaconda.org, C. There's Conda Forge, which has a bunch in there. So you can actually use these specific channels that someone has built to include in yours. If you use apt, it's the same as like when you add a Debian repository. Packages. Internet is very slow. Okay, yeah, it actually loaded. So here's 4 packages that I actually have available with Anaconda and channels. So some of them are actually really complex. This one is not even a Python package. This one's a C MPI library that I built. So can work with pretty much anything.
So when Python, is that like based on the C compiler? I'm curious what is that like?
Yeah, so this one is taking the C lamps executable and the shared library, and it's actually wrapping it with a Python. It's called Cython, which is it's like a C Python wrapper that allows you to write very minimal code to link in.
Python's implemented in other languages. Yeah, the standard one is C and Python. There's also Python.
Does .NET?
They have a .NET one, I think. If you listen to this podcast called Talk Python, they I think spent 2 or 3 episodes talking about all the different Python ways that you can run it out there. Okay, so I think for now I'll assume that everybody has gotten this virtual environment to work. Again, it's not super important that you get this working because we're actually just going to be focusing on pull requests. But I just wanted to get everyone started with how to actually install Python and how to get a virtual environment working. These are the basics. And then you also do deactivate. Yeah. I forgot which source. Okay. So that's how you get out of the virtual environment. And if you had another one that you wanted to go into, you would change name my test to some other virtual environment you have, and you can jump between all of them.
You're in Windows, don't
I did not know that. Okay, so again, future reading, they talk about how these virtual environments actually get built, where are they being stored, that sort of stuff. Okay, so the next step, everybody will need to make sure, I know it's a big controversy, but you'll need a GitHub repository for this talk. In order to actually do the pull request, you will need GitHub, so you don't really have much choice on that. We could move it over to another later. Okay, so setting up GitHub. First thing is that we already kind of to explain, Git and GitHub are not the same thing. So Git is the actual tool that you use for version control, and GitHub is I would say like a social place to host your repositories and allow people to view it, to download it, and a bunch of other things. So I think it's just very important to know that Git is really the underlying tool that makes all of this possible. Okay. So does everybody have a GitHub account? No? Just go to github.com and then set up, or sign up, should get you ready to go. So yeah, create a GitHub account. And then you will need to do what is called forking a project. And so what is this? What exactly are we doing here? Well, in order to create a pull request and contribute to an open source project, you first create a copy of that project that you will work on yourself. And then you'll make your changes and you'll put it on your own separate version of the repository. And then when you're ready, you then push over your changes to them. So the first action we have to do is do this thing called forking. So I believe I've already done it, but if you go to Chamberlain Intro to Sprinting Codeless Project and you scroll over, you're going to hit this fork button. And when you do it, it's just going to take some time. So here, I think it wouldn't ask you all, but if you have multiple places that you can fork to, it will ask you. But you'll want to just create a clone of this. Okay, I'm just going to assume that it's happened.
It's your repo, right? So you should not be seeing that. You click on your own fork.
Is this my own?
It's yours, right?
I don't think so. Oh, yeah, so it's already shown me that I've already forked the project right here. So when you fork it, you'll notice that this is like Chamberlain Intro to Sprinting Codeless Project. Now it's going to go to my username / Intro to Sprinting Codeless Project. So we click that. Yours won't show this, but for instance, mine I haven't updated in a while, so it says I'm 144 commits behind other people. But yours shouldn't say this when you have it forked properly. Okay, so once you have it forked, you'll see, like I said here, that you should have this forked from. It actually knows where this project originated from. And once you've done that, you should be ready. So the biggest step is just creating a GitHub account. The rest should be quite easy. Does anybody not have it forked? Yeah.
I just need one because I have a GitLab account for the.
Props to you. I love GitLab.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest problem is that GitHub really is the open source place where people contribute code. I put a lot of my projects on GitLab, and the visibility is like 0. Like nobody ever sees it. And if I created an old project on GitHub, that one will always take precedence over like a newer one that's been made.
What did you choose?
Just the features. I'm not going to show it right now, but it has this thing called continuous integration pipelines. And they allow you to automate all your workflow inside of GitLab, like running your tests automatically, deploying your packages to say PyPy or Anaconda. You can build your Docker images in there. You can do anything. All you do is you start with a base Docker image and then you go from there, and it can chain them all together. So check it out. it will really, it will show you what GitHub really needs to add to their stuff.
GitLab free for open source? Like GitHub was?
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of press recently because they, yeah, that, and I think they made it that if you are an open source organization, you can use all of their features for free, even their like enterprise features. Also, as long as you have a public repo, you can use their pipeline for free. You can use it to run tests, build Docker images, just unlimited. Yeah, and then you get free private repos, which I think is like the instant selling feature for a lot of people.
So what's their monetization strategy?
I wish I knew really well, but I know that they charge people enterprise contracts. I actually have a GitLab account, and I started. It's really the only thing the only software tool that I've chosen to pay for. So I think it's like $5 a month. Just because, yeah, I do worry, how are they going to get enough money?
Yeah, enterprise level, using enterprise level GitLab instance. So I think in most part it's similar to GitHub strategy until bought by Microsoft. Similar thing. Let's say enterprise, which is how GitHub was making money anyway before that Microsoft.
One thing to know is that a lot of the software is open source, so you can actually run GitLab on your own machine at home.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, so
that's what they do, because they do like money through support for those kind of systems.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept. They give prizes for people that contribute to GitLab. They'll be like the GitLab contributor of the month. They have their own feature board that it seems like they're pretty active and they listen to. I know I'm advertising about it a lot because I really like it. You can also do mirroring, so you can. I pretend that my projects are on GitHub, but they're really being pushed from GitLab the whole time. So you get all the publicity. Has everybody created the GitHub account and all ready to go? Okay, awesome. So we've got it forked, and now we're actually ready to start doing the open source contributions. Some more reading. So setting up Git. First thing, if you haven't used Git before, it's going to ask when you do your first commit what your name is and your email that's going to be associated with the contribution that you make. So you'll need to change this to whatever your name is and your email before we actually do any of the commits itself. But if you've already used Git before, surely you've run into this before, and you'll be ready to go. Welcome. You guys will probably need the URL and everything. Yeah, everybody, let me know if you haven't gotten this Git config to work.
That means if it's everything in mind, like else in mind.
Yeah, it just create a copy of it.
Yeah, you actually need both of them. Find those.
And there's also the Wi-Fi.
That's the Wi-Fi password. How do I make it bigger? Okay, so anybody not caught up with this?
Sorry, what was the last step?
The last step was that you will need to update your Git to give it your name and your email. If you don't do this, it will just complain, I think, when you're doing your commit, saying, hey, we need a name and an email for your actual commit. You should just be able to, it's just copy and paste, change the name. Unless you want your commit to show up as Johnny Appleseed. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody's got that ready. Then we'll go to using Git. So the first thing is that we'll need to actually clone. Here, let me make sure I got this right. Here they're talking about what actually Git is. We'll be able to go over this quite quickly, but Git is the actual tool that versions the files that you're dealing with. It's kind of unique compared to other version control systems because it's decentralized, which means that everybody gets to have a copy of all the files, and it leads to these, and you have to somehow merge them all together properly. And Git is a tool that helps you to do that. Okay. This is talking about how to use Git properly. It'd be worth it to read this when you want to actually use it. But we will actually go to cloning a repository because this is, now we can actually start with the open source part. Okay. So right here, the first step that you need to do is you're going to clone the Git repository. You're going to do Git Clone, and then you're going to take the URL that you got from forking your project and make sure that the URL that you're going to use for Git is going to be, I'm trying to find, here, clone or download. And I would recommend using HTTPS if you haven't used it before because you haven't gotten Git set up with your username and password. So you'll copy the URL right here, the intro to Sprint, and make sure that it has your username right here. And with that, then you'll type in Git Clone and then the name of the project. The only thing that should be different here is that your name should be right here. And once you do that, it's going to start downloading all of the file change history. I'm cheating and I'm using my own phone's internet. Okay, so what we saw right here is it started downloading all the pieces of the project. And here we have a Git repository. And one of the first things that you can look at, so we're going to go into the actual project itself. And inside of any Git repository, really hard to see here. So there's a .git folder that's going to be inside of here, and this keeps track of all the changes that take place. So when you're inside of the actual Git folder, you can do things like git log, and this will show you all the changes that have been done to this repository. Hit Q to exit out. And then we're going to actually start doing our first, oh, yeah, we need to make sure that we add, okay. We'll do Git Remote. So if you type in Git Remote, you'll see that one's already been added. and that is the origin or the place that you actually copied from. So git remote -v, and you can see that it keeps track of github.com/costrouc intro to sprinting. We want to add something called upstream, and the reason why you want to do this is oftentimes when you're working on a project, the actual repository is going to be changing while you are making your own changes. So in this intro to sprinting, if we were all contributing to it right now, this repository would be changing, but ours wouldn't be changing at all. So we need some way of grabbing from upstream or grabbing from the original project and pulling in the changes through time. So if you run this Git Remote Add, it will add another repository for us to be able to use. And when I type in Git Remote, we'll see that there is now origin and upstream added. So origin is where our actual code and changes are being stored, and upstream is the repository that the original project is hosted on. Let me scroll. There we go. This isn't too low for people now. Okay. And once you've gotten to this step right here, if you have origin and upstream, then you're all caught up.
What's the first one?
So the first one is that you're going to be doing Git Clone. So you're going to do Git Clone and
Git Clone.
Oh, so Git is the actual the command, and clone is the action.
The URL.
Your URL is going to be different. So where you actually fork the intro to sprinting codeless project. You'll want to go there, and if you scroll to the side, there's clone or download. And the simplest for now would be to make sure that you use the HTTPS one, because it'll ask you for a username and password. And you just click this copy, and it should give you enough where you can just do Git clone and then the URL.
Onward. Okay, just for
Yes.
Does anybody else need help right now?
Okay, so CD space, CD space intro. Now just to test if you're in it, you can just type in Git log or Git Status. Actually, Git Status.
Yeah, that's the
Well, I got it on the remote. Yeah, so now you need to actually add the option. So you could Git remote and then make if you
Make changes or push it. That's
and
the
Git remote upstream.
and
Just Git remote add upstream. Git remote add upstream. Git remote add upstream. Yeah.
Okay, so right here.
So
So it's the same except.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, so sometimes what happens is,
Yeah.
so,
Man, I just cried.
in that,
That was made since the first fork that we had, right? After.
Pre-existing as well.
And do Git space clone.
But we're going.
So this is going to create a directory with all of your.
and now, so get just,
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Apple time is going to fuck it.
because now this is the project.
It actually knew she's trying to find Git. And
I used to have it on my list.
yeah.
And you have,
That's good. Okay, so you'll have Git Clone, and then you'll do the Remote Add. You have a website, so
Yeah.
it has that step on there. Does anybody else need to?
So, I should change my.
Okay, so Git Remote Add.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can tell. So give them space.
But you put a slash at the end. Git slash. Oh, maybe you can copy. Oh, you don't want to change it to your username. You want to use the chain.
You have to use the original strings.
Yeah, you need a for project there. So go to intro to sprinting. So you need to go with intro to sprinting underscore photos project. Create a new. Create a new.
You know what? Yeah, Git Remote Add upstream. You got to add in where you clone. You need to do for the before.
That's it.
That was this thing. Yeah, three.
Yeah, kind of lost. You need to fork go to that page.
Yes.
And if I know I'm going through that fast, but all that it was kind of oh yeah, that shit is working.
Well, that's better help with
Once you have that, now you're going to be you're going to see that directory first.
Mostly, usually, I think it'll take
Oh, it's
Do I need to walk anything?
Origin there. Yeah.
Does anybody else need, you know?
Yeah, mine.
So once this is still, forever wait, once I'm done with that, on this, what's the next step?
So I believe you're on the Clone repository. And once you get there, you'll see at the bottom of each one of these pages, it takes you to the next section.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was going to add
So it's normally
and I'm going to always stop about there, but there's a bunch of material you read that. It's all a lot of stuff.
Okay, I didn't look at the text, doesn't matter.
Yeah. This is learning how to create Python. All right, so I'm going to assume that everybody's gotten this clone working with the remote. It's not super important that you have this upstream working right now, but that should be enough. All right, so next, we scroll down. Now we're going to learn the basic workflow in Git, add, commit, push. And we're not going to talk about creating branches and checking them out. That's certainly the correct way to do a pull request. But for now, just committing to your master and then submitting a pull request from there is perfectly fine, and people will take it if you do it that way.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a branch?
Okay. To be honest, cannot tell you. I don't know 100%, but I imagine a fork is kind of a made-up concept that GitHub made. So it's kind of like an exact copy of the repo, but your own. It's not. They're pretty much yeah, it's hard to say what the difference is.
Okay, but are they different in terms of like command line terminology?
So when you fork a repository, all that's doing is creating another Git repo.
Okay.
So that's really the only difference, is that you have a different path to access a repo at.
Okay. Whereas branches, you have to.
Okay.
Okay.
You can have
Yeah.
your own branches, like on your computer, branching your. Maybe it's not.
So branches are like alternate realities.
I think that's a good way. That's a really good way to put it.
Basically, you have a pile of files in some repo, right? And then you can create alternate realities where the file says this,
But the
or instead
branches
it
are
says that.
inherently related to, inherently like under the.
Intended to come back to the original.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A fork is a repo that is aware that it is a clone.
Okay. I see. Yeah, it's very nuanced.
Yeah, and yeah, along with branches, you can do a lot of things with branches in Git, and like you can, like you said, completely different files. Your whole directory can completely change if you go from one branch to another. But it's the way that you like add features or fix some bug sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing about, so why do you need to actually fork? Well, the reason why you need to fork is because if you were trying to push your changes onto the actual person's repository, they would say, no, I don't want those changes. So you need some like staging place to be able to put your changes so they can compare the two. And that's kind of the whole reason that forks came about, is so you can see the changes that they're proposing. Okay, so yeah.
Real quick, so like on GitLab or something, does it have the same concept of fork, or is it like called something else on GitLab?
Oh, yeah, actually, it's funny you say that. They call it a merge instead of a pull request. I noticed that difference a little while ago, but I believe they still call it a fork. Yeah. All different, I guess, different names, but it's the exact same idea. Create a copy of the project that you control, and then commit to that, and then push it over back to the original person. Okay, so add, commit, push. So once we are in, you're going to be inside of the repo. All right, we've got a bunch of files in here if you're inside the same directory as me. And if you click do Git Status, this is something that you can just type out of habit when you're using Git. And this is to tell you, have any of the files that I'm currently working on, have they changed? Have I done anything to change the files here? It says right now, your branch is up to date with origin master, which means that nothing has changed. So let's actually make a change to one of these files. So I'll do the Raven, for instance, and you guys pick your own file that you want to change. Imagine that you're writing some nice new feature for a Python project and you want to push it up. Okay, so this is the Raven, and I am going to change this number 84 to some really long number that it wasn't before. And I'd recommend change somewhere differently so you don't get a merge conflict, because that will be a very scary thing to deal with first. Okay, so I've made the changes. I'm now saving the file. And before, when I typed in Git Status, it said everything was fine. But now that I do it, it says one file has been modified, the raven.txt. So it has a way of checking all the files inside of this directory and seeing if anything actually changed. So I think it would be worthwhile if everybody's actually made their change and get to this point for here.
Quick question, how did you get where, like mine keeps telling me that it doesn't know, it says not a Git repository.
It's probably because you're not inside of the intro to sprint directory.
Okay. Oh.
Because how does Git know if it's in a Git repository? It looks for the .git folder inside of the directory. And it will look recursively down, I think. Yeah, it looks down.
So this is
This is a file.
Anybody else
That was on the
need help making changes?
software.
No.
Okay. I'm just gonna assume we've gotten this, and then I'll help people as they need it. So once you've made your changes, you then need to add your changes and like actually commit it. So we have our files that have been modified, and we'll do git add the raven.text. So this is adding the file that we changed to status. So now if we do status, we'll see that it went from red to green, meaning that it's been staged. So we've kind of stated that, yes, I'd like to add these changes. And once you've then, we're going to go down here, status, let's make sure, yeah, add a new line. They kind of mentioned it here, so we're at the point where we've added the file. We've done the status and we've seen that that's changed. And now we're going to actually commit the changes that we've made to the Raven. So if you type in git commit, this one's actually, is this using VI? I don't know how to use this. Okay, so if you do git commit, it opens to VI, then I hope you know how to use Vim. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do -m. I'm an Emacs user. Shameless plug. So commit, and there I've actually made the commit when I typed in git commit and whatever my message was. I'm sorry that I didn't get to actually show how you would edit the change message, but you just need to edit the very top line in that file and then save it, and it should just work. And once we have git commit, we can then see that the Raven changes have shown up in my Git log that I can use. And to double check after we've done that, Git status says there is nothing to commit. And it's because I've committed all the changes that I've made and there's nothing more to add. It's kind of smart actually, and it says that you should probably push your local commits to the forked repository. And I think we'll show that next. Okay, they're pretty ambitious. We're going to push the changes. My password is too long to actually type it in.
Yeah. That'll work. I know I want to do so many steps. I think it's really helpful with like some. Setup was a bit broken. After that, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So does anybody need help doing the push to the repository? Any of that? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, it's always useful to see a couple of people. I have and I've updated it a couple of times while working all the time. You gotta make sure that's the part where I just skip. Just gonna assume that pushed. Universal task that kind of changes around a little bit. I had to update it. You gotta make sure I get the right one. Once you got that, you should know. You know how to use it. It's really easy to use. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. And then if you want
those things.
Are you trying to exit?
Yeah. Git Status.
Do you want to add anything? So one thing I did the first one is look with commits. So I go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just type something that's less than 40 characters.
Just accessing
Change that in
Just make up that name.
So what are the first things you know that?
So you control that right now. It's going to ask you. They say
This allows you to edit the text rather than some of that.
and one that's really cool, yeah, it's going to exit.
Yeah, a lot of links use
It's just telling you that you can actually kind of push your version
it tells you that and you can type which. So you have to do that.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. You go to also. So one thing that's going on that you can see. Basically the branch is one bit. So it's kind of how you can do it. So this I never really learned all the stuff. And I really don't like
Actually, stages that you
I stick for like I guess
Yeah, just you just do commandos, save it, basically.
yeah.
I think we might find out.
But our what was the last thing we did?
I
Added the changes, committed there, and then pushed them over.
So you need to do git push with assuming that you've already done it.
Yeah.
Are you saying because you can just hit having git push, you know? Yeah. You always have to specify a branch. You like git push minus all. This I use like a. But yeah, I think it's just along the lines of GitHub repo.
Okay, so it seems like most people have gotten it pushed to their forked repository. Yours will look very different than mine because I don't remember what my password is for this, but it will tell you that your commit is ahead of master by 1. And then once you do that, you're then going to click this button right here for pull request. And from there, I wish that mine would look like yours. Yes. So on the forked repository, the repository that like you actually pushed your commit to, you'll be looking for this little pull request icon. If you do it properly, you would create a separate branch and you would push that. And it would actually, GitHub would say, hey, you have this new branch. Do you want to pull request it right now? So it almost makes your life easier if you create a new branch. But you have to learn how to create branches, which is not a good introduction to Git. Yours should definitely look different than mine. There isn't anything to compare. Yours will say that there is something to add. And then once you click that, it should say push pull request. And then you'll be able to put a comment of the changes that you made. And for this repository, they should pretty much accept anything that you put there. So feel free to push any text files there. Let's see. I'm curious what the next steps were here. of git diff. Man, you can see, won't bother with that. Okay, we're going to skip quite a far ahead and go to using GitHub because there were several other pages on creating a branch. So if you want to learn how to properly do branching in this repository, they also have directions on how to do that. So submitting a pull request, there's the GitHub concepts, but I don't think that GitHub needs to be explained too much. You can read up on what all they do. So submitting a pull request, this is create a pull request. You'll notice that it looks quite different for us, and that was because we did not create a separate branch. That's the whole reason why this is not green on ours. Then you'll get to this point when it will give you a title for the pull request, and then you can also detail the changes that you've made. One thing that I'd like to mention, and I usually forget this, that whenever you do a pull request, it's a pretty good habit to create an issue before you do something like that. So GitHub has a way of, if you look at any project, you'll have the code that you can actually look at, issues and pull requests. And pull requests are where all the code changes are, and issues are where you report actual problems with running the software, or maybe you like a new feature added. But you can really save yourself some time with a project in adding an issue and saying what you'd like to fix, the feature that you'd like to add, because one big part of open source is that maybe the developer actually doesn't want the changes that you make. And it can really hurt when somebody says like, hey, I really don't need that at all. That's a useless idea. You will hear that out in the wild, and that's just part of open source. Some people will take in your commits, some won't. Generally, I think it's a bad sign if they're very negative towards what you added. I think it says a lot about their project, and there are lots of other very friendly projects out there that will openly take any pull request and give you nice feedback on what you need. So it's a community. That's what GitHub is, pull requests. So yeah, create an issue first before you do a pull request. You will save yourself a lot of time and frustration too.
Is the issue tied to the pull request in some way, or just separate for podcast?
They're initially completely separate, and there's a GitHub notation for referencing the issue. So when you do the pull request, you'll ask for a title, and then you can put your changes. I think you do like # issue number, like # 15, and that will.
Since you're doing it from the GitHub website, it actually will start pulling up issues.
Really?
You type it, it's right there.
Okay. Yeah, but I really recommend linking the two together. It will save your huge hassle. It's really good. It's just good for everybody to have that.
So in GitLab, instead of submit a pull request, you'd say submit a merge request?
Yeah, the buttons are in the exact same place, just different name.
Why didn't they keep the same name?
I-
Keep the same name, right?
One company chose a name.
So GitLab versus GitHub, I mean, those are just different implementations of Git, right?
So Git is a version.
You're using all the same commands, basically, right? Whether it's GitLab or GitHub.
Yeah, GitLab and GitHub are just storage repositories for your Git.
Right.
That's all it is. And then they add nice goodness of a community, issues, pull requests. They basically build on top the things that you need for collaboration between developers.
Same Git, different wrappers.
Yeah. I wanted to, maybe they have it. I'm not trying to highlight this project. I just want to see if it shows up the merge thingy. This is GitLab, by the way, right here. Okay, yeah, they call it merge requests.
Same exact symbol.
Once you get used to it, you don't even notice it. Here they have issues, so it's the exact same thing. But the only difference is that GitLab's community is not as strong as GitHub.
So is GitLab a fork of GitHub?
No, not at all. Completely different. And in fact, I think, I don't know what GitHub is written in, but GitLab is purely written in Ruby.
Really?
Yeah. Ruby on Rails. I don't know anything about Ruby, but when you're trying to install it and set up the Docker container, you need to know a little bit. Okay. So yeah, you've got that pull request. Okay. So if you've gotten to this step, what will show up is inside of Intro to Sprinting Codeless Project in Chamberlain, you'll see that your pull request is mentioned. I see that bgrove01 has done you've done a pull request. There's Paul, OJ, somebody has done one. Alex, you're ahead of the curve right there. Yeah, so I see a bunch of people have added their changes already. I didn't notify him that there were going to be a bunch of pull requests, but I'm sure you'll get a nice friendly, like, this is an awesome contribution. And they'll just looks like he's a little bit behind right now, but I think at this point, this is pretty much the whole introduction. If you have any questions, seriously, just reach out to me on the Slack channel, the Knox Devs, or anything. I'd love to help. And once you've got this down, you can contribute to any project out there, and I think that's the most exciting part of development, is interacting with other people and adding this one feature to the software that you've really wanted for a while. So.
Do anyone know about FreeNAS at all? It's a storage operating system. I mean, it's an open source project. I mean, I'm part of it, I just contribute. I work with this. So, I mean, it's an open source project. Anyone is invited to kind of come and contribute to the project because I'm the web UI team, so we have lots of standard work that we do. So, I mean, it's an open source project.
And everybody can view the changes online.
Yeah, you can view my changes, what I have done. You can see, and we have at least 5 or 10 different repositories under the project. One is web UI, another one is FreeNAS, which is kind of the middleware, which is written entirely in Python. So Python folks more than welcome. Then there is a FreeBSD thing, which is written in C++ or C.
That's really cool. I wanted to, so one thing you can do to kind of see what changes somebody's making. Here's Saul, who's somebody that's really involved with Jupyter Lab. But I believe you can just look at, you can look at their contribution history. So if you're just curious, what projects is somebody working on, here's Sci compiler, and we can see all the changes that they've made. You can look at commit histories, so what all has been added there. This is what GitHub and GitLab adds, is the visual, the interaction, the social aspect of coding. Yeah. I hope you get to contribute to some awesome projects.
GitLab even has a GitLab folder. GitLab open source end.
Right.
So you have to go to gitlab.com/GitLab-org. You can actually see, it's kind of meta, but.
Is it gitlab.com/GitLab?
-org.
Okay, so
okay. One thing. Yeah, and they've got all their different pieces to it. One thing you'll hear about GitLab is that it's slow, and I think that's absolutely true. It's definitely not as performant as GitHub, but I think that's a very valid complaint for GitLab if you're considering moving towards it. But for me, speed hasn't been a huge issue. The difference between a push that takes 1 second versus 2 seconds is not really that meaningful.
What wasn't GitHub they had this problem for the DOS attack, they were kind of really slow at some point of time. It was taking forever to check out one of the repos. Maybe if the Git repo is big, so it was taking an hour just to check out, because all of the errors were kind of just hitting the DDoS attack. So
yeah.
So it was pretty bad.
I imagine. So they all have problems at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So that.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much concludes it. Yeah, there's a bunch more material. Please read the intro to sprinting sheets. There's plenty more to learn. And I know that anybody on the Knox Devs channel. I'd be happy to help you learn how to move forward with this. So, and I'd love to meet at a coffee shop if somebody wants to, learn how to do this further and create a branch. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.